Good afternoon, everyone. BC Richfield here, coming to you live from London. It's just gone a couple of minutes past midday here, making it a few minutes past 1100 UTC. How are we all doing today? A very happy Wednesday, 8th of October to everyone. Yeah, what a great time to be in the markets. We can see here from the screen, we've had that big move up from Bitcoin. We're going to review what we discussed on Monday's show, look at the trade plans that we laid out. But ultimately, as we can see from the wonderful blue squiggly on the screen, we are looking like we might get this kind of ranging environment with Bitcoin, you know, in that upper range that we've established, or looking to establish would be more correct, which is above this level here. All right, so we're going to look at this on the higher time frame. This was a high set in July that was capping the market on a weekly scale for several weeks through this period, so definitely has some significance. All right, we saw the deviation here, the move below led to that large sell-off. The area acted as strong resistance through here, and you'll see how very clean that was to establish on the higher time frame. This is the kind of lower time frame plan, the daily down to the 4 hour here, where if price kind of sits in and ranges between these levels and gets comfortable, Bitcoin's finished sapping and draining the liquidity away from alts. Hopefully, if it sits in here, we see that rotation. That was the plan that we laid out on Monday. So we're going to take a look and see how this looks. Who have we got here? Gokhan Dimir, SNX, big competition. Check out SNX coin. All right, mate, I certainly will. We're going to take a look at Bitcoin. We're going to take a look at Ethereum. We're going to take a look at Solana. We're going to take a look at Asta. We're going to take a look at Stable. We'll slide a cheeky little look at SNX for you as well, mate. And if anybody has anything else they would like me to cover, please do just pop that in the chat. So without further ado, before we dive into the charts, it would be remiss of us to not look over the news. All right, so we're just going to flick across to that now. Obviously monitoring the key catalysts here in the US market. Reason for that is the largest economy in the world, has the biggest impact on other markets, and the dollar is the world's reserve currency. Okay, just to give that some more context. So where are we? Well, the big yellow box at the top tells us a lot here. US government data may be impacted by the shutdown, and it has been so far. You will see tentative on a lot of these statements. All right, the employment data, which we missed last week, heading into this week as well. So at the moment, we've got eyes on what is coming up, and the really big one at the moment is the FOMC meeting minutes tonight. Yeah. So as we look at this here, the key thing that we've got to look for is the tone of Powell, right? So the whole idea of this is whether there's more of a hawkish or more of a dovish tone to what he's saying, you know, how the data's kind of coming through. I imagine a lot of this is obviously going to focus around the government shutdown. Now, historically, if we look at this, it's not actually had the biggest impact on the market. However, I think the longest government shutdown, you'll have to fact check this yourself because this is from memory, but I think it was 18 or 13, widespread for you there. But basically it was the longest one. I think it was 16 or 17 days. And that really did start to take its toll. But basically there's no data or real information for what happens if we move beyond that. And a lot of, you know, prediction markets, a lot of analysts, are predicting that this could really drag on to be the longest one. So there could be some kind of impact. But one of the stats I found really, really interesting actually was that 86% of the time that there have been government shutdowns, The S&P 500 has been higher 12 months later. All right, so make of that what you will. Obviously, there's always new data we're plugging into these systems, but I found that stat really, really interesting. So FOMC meeting minutes is the real kind of key thing here. Obviously, if we look through on Thursday, unemployment claims was going to be what people are looking for. Ultimately, the soft labor market is really underpinning the Fed's cuts at the moment. Powell mentioned, he used the term, I think it was almost exactly, it was kind of a risk management measure against the soft labor market, right? So if we started to see strength come through to the labor market and, we start to see inflation tick up a little bit more, maybe a little bit of weakness in economic growth, at that point, we could, start to see them see concerns raised about inflation rising. Therefore, the interest rate cuts could come back down. And that wouldn't be particularly good for risk markets, and obviously crypto is very much one of those. Paradox trade. Are you online trade in futures? I do trade futures, my friend. I trade some crypto. I mostly trade the NASDAQ. But yeah, absolutely do trade futures. I would always recommend to anybody, even if you are experienced, but especially if you're new to the space and you are, playing around with crypto, then, spot really is the option. I know you're going to see all these supernormal returns posted by a lot of people on Twitter. There'll be a whole range of those people. Some of them will actually be doing it. Some of it will be fake. Some of it will be really small amounts. They're going in and showing these supernormal percentage returns with profit cards and that, using a lot of leverage. Just be really, really careful out there if you are going to use leverage. It's a very different animal. People think it's a way to get rich very quickly, but I've never seen a faster way to get poor. All right. So not saying it can't be used properly, but just make sure that you're learning how that works. All right. So let's take a look on here. Right. Let's go across to our charts. Right. Let's take a look at Bitcoin. So what are we looking at here? I'm just going to zoom out a little bit. You're going to have to ignore this noise here for a moment. But look, this is the high I was talking about, set back the week commencing July the 7th. This weekly high here beautifully capped the market. So when we had this large expansion beyond it, we were looking for an initial rejection around about these highs. This was the high that was set on the 14th of July, and then obviously the prior all-time high, which was set here in August. All right. So as we look at this here, we can still see that level capping the market, which is absolutely fine. Now, as we look at this price kind of coming back down, we're looking for it to hold this level and therefore create a lower time frame range here, allowing that expansion into alts. All right, so we're going to drop this down onto the daily. Here we go. So again, we can see how price was behaving really nicely in this range. If you look at the kind of gray, greeny box area, price between this, but really between this high and here, price just kind of moving around. Had kind of a ranging environment here. We saw the expansion, price then kind of ranging about in here again. Now price moving up. We are seeing a lot of strength from Bitcoin at the moment, and that isn't obviously necessarily being reflected into alts. But as we know that, as with capital rotation, right, Bitcoin is kind of draining the capital. That's where it's going at the moment. The liquidity is going into Bitcoin, and we want to see Bitcoin chill. Henceforth, this was the kind of plot from our squiggly blue line, and move this down onto the 4 hour and see what is happening. So we were taking some long trades from here, worked out quite nicely as always, and as stated, I think on the live show, but certainly with any of the trades and with any of the members, this here was the all-time high, right? So, whenever you're attacking these levels, you just got to be really careful. You just want to secure your positions. That's why we've been building shorter time frame positions, looking to kind of pyramid them into swings. So obviously positions built into here worked really, really nicely over a couple of days, more of kind of intraday plays here. So this was our first kind of target point. We're now seeing reaction down here as well. Remember, with these type of plays, you either want to be aggressive or you want to be trading with some kind of confirmation, all right? So you either want to be taking them on the engagement here when you start to see that absorption. For example, we see this long wick coming down into here. Beautiful pin bar. You then saw it come the other way. This is sellers trying to push the market back down. They're doing so from this inefficiency caused by this large drop. But, what we saw on here, especially when you move on to the lower time frame, was beautiful absorption before we saw this pop. And you can look for very, very simple things here, right? Like market structure breaks. You're looking for these drives into here, these moves above, all right, looking for those momentum moves higher. And even with this one, right, when we saw this move coming and we saw this large expansion here, this was a really nice area to take some long positions, all right? It was right towards the end of Tuesday's PM session over in New York as well. Buyers stepped in, but actually really failed to kind of gather any momentum here. It was actually the London session that we saw today really start to kind of pick the bid back up here. So want to see how this plays out heading into New York. All right, New York session so very important because the highest, trading volume and volatilities we see cross over with those sessions, especially from the end of New York into the end of London into New York. So at the moment, looking at this here on BTC, price has started the day really strong. Really want to see this kind of hold in and around this area. The reason for that is because we don't want to see any key breakdowns, but if we see this really start to rip again, then that's probably going to be taking the key liquidity out of the market that we're going to want to see on other assets. So let's go and take a look at Ethereum. Right, we can see here the squiggle plan, right? So just move this back to a daily for a moment. Right, as we see here, price drove down into this area. And what I like about this is now it's kind of reclaiming this key area. We were looking for this, looking for price to kind of hold in around this area here to trap these traders offside, yeah? Anybody that was really late to shorting this has now probably been taken out. But also people that were shorting from up here, price is returning to this level now. They're thinking, okay, it's probably a good place to get out here. If this is going to drop, we can always get back in later on. All right, but this one is really kind of going up. Hey, morning heathens. How we doing, Burton? Good to see you. Yeah, it was a bit of a cheeky pullback yesterday. I mean, just kind of contextualizing it at the moment, right? I think the squiggles here were pretty decent, right? So we got the expansion above here, right? We were looking at this in terms of the range breakout, which we'll look at on the lower time frame as well from a volume perspective. But just going to get rid of that for a moment, so it's a little bit cleaner. We're just really looking for these type of plays, right? Where you see these areas, very colorful chart for me, this, which you won't normally see, but this is real high time frame areas. When we saw the close above this here, price coming back down, this was the key area for us to get in. Now, this is a little bit of an interesting one here, but this was highlighted as the key kind of breaker, the consolidation that led to the move higher that took liquidity. So from here, if price had closed back down below this, we would look for underside retests and then price to sell off. However, we created this new move higher, so now we need to update this. All right, so we're just going to get rid of this. Now, we've got this really large area here, all right? So this is, again, the down move, the consolidation when price moved higher. Now, buyers within this area here, price comes back down to where they were obviously in control of the market. They then have a decision to make. When it starts to come back down below these areas, any returns to this area gives those same traders the option to step out of their positions, all right? So if we take a look at this area here and we draw that across, I know it's a large area, but this for me really does mean a lot. ETH getting back above this area here, right? And we can even draw this across as well. ETH getting back above this area here is going to be key. We get back above here and we start to build some structure on the lower time frames, then I think we start to trade this level to level again. And again, we look for the same thing here, right? Squiggles aren't doing particularly well today on this time frame, but you get the kind of general idea. Ultimately, this move higher was very quickly retraced. And as Burton's kind of highlighting on there, this kind of brutal sell-off that we saw, equities as well. We saw a mass sell-off in equities yesterday as well. I'll show you that on the NASDAQ. We were trading that yesterday. We saw that big drop. Really, really hard for crypto to kind of sustain itself if equity markets, risk markets in the traditional sense are really selling off aggressively. All right. So as we look at this here, we get the move back above. I think this is a good area to kind of build that platform. Really, the best area is this consolidation that led to the drop, right? Because this is where sellers took control of the market. This is where they really dominated the buyers. Buyers then are either stopping out of their positions here or reconsidering. Move back above here would put buyers back in control of the market. And then I would have a greater confidence that as we were looking, hoping that we got back here, that we never did, obviously, we retained a short bias here, which served us really well. But had we broken above this area, this was the consolidation that led to the drop. If this is where sellers are in control, we want to see those sellers getting to mitigate here, stepping out of their positions, removing the resistance, and therefore, and sometimes a lot of the time adding then to that upwards momentum. All right, it's why you see these things, people talking about liquidity sweeps, bits and pieces. This is a really good example in here, right? So what do we see in here? Right, you get the move down, sharp, aggressive move down, buyers start to step back into the market. But this really is the origin in here of that move lower. And yes, you have to be really patient. You're waiting then for this consolidation breakout, which you get here. But then look at the aggression of that breakout. That's because, you know, the resisting force, the sellers that are trying to keep this market suppressed because this is the position that they were in control of, are now out of control of this area. It means that they can ultimately jump on board with the move higher, or they're getting stopped out of their position. And we're also triggering a lot of breakout traders in this direction as well. So the order flow will probably have spiked up quite aggressively there too. So with ETH at the moment, it's just in a little bit of no man's land for me. I do like how it's taken out these lows. All right, we had equal lows down here, so again a really good liquidity pool. This low here and this low here giving a set liquidity, nice move below it. And again, you know, look at the candles, don't ignore the candles here, they tell us so much. You know, the move lower here, look at this one, look at how the sellers were really dominating this candle here. The upside wick here is longer, body to the downside. We've got a small nose on that as well, right? But this one was just all downside wick. Remember, buyers have pushed price all the way there. You know, I don't think anybody says this better than SC. When I heard it from him many years ago, the bodies are what price has achieved. Yeah, the wicks are what it tried to achieve. So buyers tried to get price all the way up here and ultimately just got absorbed. Yeah, sellers were too strong, pushed it down. Then you're really starting to mark out your key liquidity. Then, you know, what's the likelihood that price stops here but doesn't run this low as well, right? So you mark those areas up. But then look at this candle here. Long downside wick. This is the opposite. This is sellers trying to push the market lower, getting absorbed, coming back above support, and now price is looking to push higher. So as an initial target, I am looking at this inefficiency here, this gap. So let me just draw that in for you guys. Right. And this just overlays really nicely here. This whole thing here should be acting as resistance. You can take some early stage positions here, especially after you see a nice 4-hour close like this. You could jump on board through London heading into New York, try and catch some intraday. But ultimately, I'm still expecting a lot of resistance in this area here. Sellers are still in control of this market at the moment. You know, obviously, if we're looking at this on the daily time frame, we've had that large drop back down below this area here. But in terms of taking the more aggressive approach, looking at this on the 4-hour, ultimately on the high time frame, the weekly, etc., and on the daily, we still remain bullish. So we really need to remember that. All right. How abnormal would you say the trends are this quarter, if abnormal at all? That's a really good question. So I think it's very, very difficult to kind of monitor trends in terms of, you know, you can use things like vol, so you know, volatility bits and pieces like that. Obviously, there's ways to measure with market structure and whatnot. I think the key things that have brought in the abnormalities at the moment in terms of the capital rotation, when we compare it to previous cycles, is that, you know, you hear this a lot, right? People talking about it being different this time, right? And you know, it's slightly different every time because there's always new data and there's always new factors. But I don't think we've seen such a systemic shock as we've seen this time around, with Trump coming into the White House, people expecting him to be very pro-crypto, the tariffs that have come in as well, the escalations, obviously, you know, Ukraine and Russia that we've seen as well, obviously the sad situation that's been continuing for a long time in Gaza, right? But there has been the rhetoric has been slightly different this time around. We've seen kind of, you know, everything happen, that we had the mass spike in inflation. We saw the world moving towards, you know, recession fears. Now we've kind of moved slightly away from them, but the data's not kind of coming through enough to really kind of, you know, alleviate those fears. You know, interest rates that are coming down are doing so tentatively because the risk of inflation going back up is still quite high. So we're stuck in this kind of stagflationary environment. And it makes it really, really difficult for risk assets, and things like crypto, which are like a beta risk asset, means that they're just going to be they're going to be a lot more sensitive to these kind of market moves. And there's no doubt we've been in a very news and fundamentally driven market. So from a technical perspective, it's been a little bit of a nightmare for swing traders, right? I have so much respect for, you know, Trading Tank, Just Pit, Resume, people, you know, swing traders who I'm fortunate enough to have on my team over at the Birb Nest. You know, a lot of these positions are a little bit like the fundamental side, you know, and we've got one of the best in the space there with KZM as well. a lot of the narrative has kind of been getting in and out quite quickly, sniping these profits, sitting back. And I think the reason a lot of people are getting hurt in here at the moment is the kind of using that older approach of, buy what's the hot topic at the moment, what's got the kind of all the buzz behind it. We saw it with Asta, right? We saw it with Stable, and you are going to get these outliers, but it's been very difficult to kind of hold and see any super normal returns in this cycle so far. But overall, when you kind of look at it, I know this is only on a 4 hour, right? But let's move this to a daily. Hey, Demon, how you doing, buddy? We got a pretty chilled one today, my friend. I'll pop back to just give you a quick overview on the BTC chart. No worries. Hey, Jojo, great to have you with us. Ignore all the squiggles, guys, about that. Lops, hello, mate. About all season. Yeah, good question. We are just kind of coming onto that at the moment, really, like looking at this with ETH, looking at this with Bitcoin, talking about the capital rotation. Didn't get Astro Stable, got Solana instead. I think Solana's a good long-term bet. Yeah, and I know you love your gold, Jojo. We just, we were always thinking about the degens on this show as well, right? They're not all traditional market people like ourselves. Jojo is a wonderful team member of ours over at the Nest who is very, very focused on legacy markets as well. And actually, I don't even really like talking about legacy markets on this because the legacy markets have been a relative joy to trade in a lot of respects because the NASDAQ has just been stuck in up only. You could have literally put a couple of moving averages on that for the last X amount of years and just made fortunes. Doesn't mean it's going to continue that way, right? But it has been good. And I think that's a good point as well, Jojo. Are you guys having fun with this pullback? The markets are this just repeating machine where price is setting, gunning for new all-time highs and people bemoaning the fact they couldn't get into the trade or they're aping in higher. And it very quickly turns the sentiment when you get these pullbacks and people become afraid to buy. As a famous pit trader once told me, and I can't repeat all the language that he used because it was so brutal, but the long and short of it is you want to be buying when there's blood in the water. If you're not buying when there's blood in the water, you're pick whatever expletive you would like to put in after it. And it's very true though. Look, if you look even on the chart at the moment, if you're buying into these big pumps, right? Yeah, this one worked okay, but actually look how much this thing came back. If you were buying in here, you're taken out versus waiting for those moves lower. Even if we look at this chart and we only used a daily chart and we only used engulfing candles or bullish pin bars, yeah? Let's just have a very quick look and see where that would have got us. So pull back here, bullish engulfing candle, you would have got in here, traded it up to the liquidity. Fair enough. Price still pulling back. Didn't really get any major pin bars through here. We didn't really get any engulfing candles either. Maybe, this one here, you've come off the back of another white candle here. It's not technical, but you could have looked at that one. You would have got flushed out there. Price kind of coming through here, which was a little bit brutal. But as you look at the dips down here, I mean, look at this one. Beautiful engulfing candle leading you up, pin bar candle leading you up here. I think, people don't necessarily pay enough attention to the chart sometimes. There's no magic in these candles. This is just a pure, unadulterated print of what happened. So that's where it makes sense to look for. So at the moment, I think this looks good here for ETH on the daily. We're reacting in this gap here, this inefficiency or fair value gap, however you know it. We've also got a large inversion gap heading through here as well. So this inefficiency here as price moved down was rebalanced. Then we see that coming across into this area here. So we've got quite a bastion of support heading through this level. I'd really like to see today's candle close, with a slightly larger body here and ideally very little or no nose, meaning this kind of little upwick, and show that, the buyers are kind of stepping in here. You see that with these type of candles here, the longer wicks are to the downside, showing sellers trying to sell the market, then getting absorbed, larger body and price ultimately moving higher. So it's always an interesting thing to keep an eye on. Stefan's, hello, mate. People say the local top is in because of the 4 hour close. Well, I tell you what, before we go back, we're just going to finish up on this. We're going to take a quick look for Demon and just run over the Bitcoin again very quickly. I'm just going to take a sip of tea. Sorry, I'm not really with it at the moment, a little bit under the weather. So apologies if I'm a bit slow on the uptake. So just to finish up here on ETH, if we look at this here, yeah, or if we get like an ETH chart, for example, that I don't think I would have anything on. Yeah, something like this, right? And you take a volume profile across this area. price for me is kind of within this range, right? And whether you're using volume profile or whatever you're using, you can see a large expansion here, and we've got pretty much like a range high here, or this kind of area here, I would say. Right, and then we're looking at kind of a range low in and around here, I would say, something like this. Even if you used it as that, I mean, I really do like this. Here is a range as well, just because you're taking in like the bodies of these candles here, all of these. But you can see price is within this area, right? This was the deviation. Price stepped back in the range here. We didn't get a retest here, but price expanded up. We're now at the range highs. So if I want to kind of highlight the key areas here for me, now I know again people are looking at this going like, but look, it's the high up here, and we want to kind of be involved in that. Well, you either just want to long into resistance or you don't really. It's a slightly larger area with this wick up here, but it probably would be a little bit remiss of us to not include this. But this is like, whether you take it from this, whether you're looking at this kind of area here, we haven't had a close above this, right? So the plan is this. I want to long up into this area and mitigate my risk, take some profit, secure my stops when we come back to this area. But I want to do it from a position of strength, right? So if we take our Fibonacci, for example, here, and we go, okay, 382 drop here. Maybe we take off from here. I'd want some confirmation though, because that's not a large retracement. I would rather see price down around the 0.5 area here, and then look for some lower time frame confirmation to push it higher. But even if I did get involved here and get that pullback, we go into here, I would still want to see this, right? I would want to see this level closed above. We can see here the wicks either above or into this area that have all led to pretty sizable corrections, all right? If ETH can buck that trend now and show some strength, then I think we're in a good space to do so. We have these adjoined inefficiencies here, which will be a higher time frame, like a 2-day gap. So price is reacting at that now, meaning that there's a chance that we run from here. If not, then just looking to do it from slightly lower down. But ETH, I think, overall looks quite good here. So while we kind of stay in the range here, I think it's okay to take long positions if we get the setups into these highs. Again, the caveat to this, which we'll take a look at in a moment, is I do want to see the like the NASDAQ, the S&P 500 behaving as well. I ideally want to see the VIX remaining low, so it kind of breeds that risk tolerant environment that we want to be involved in. All right. Slow is my state of consistency. Well, they say slow and steady wins the race, right, Burton? That's the thing. I think definitely in crypto, the very best people I've ever come across have that approach of they're just high conviction, pick their projects, average into them, even if they're really, really, really dropping, and then just hold through the storm when everybody else is losing their head, right? It's a really admirable skill set. It's one I'm not great at. I'm a trader at the end of the day. So I'm a chart guy more than an investor. I've got a lot better at investing because of the team that I have around me, right? But, historically, I was an awful investor because I just, for me, the game is kind of getting into positions, securing positions relatively quickly, taking profit, then leaving some runners. Obviously the people that have made really, really, really large fortunes, generational wealth, almost some of them in previous cycles, have been ones that have invested in these things at the very early stages and held them right through to the death. And that's what we have, our amazing fundamental team and analysts for as well. But from a technicals perspective, whilst the market is encouraging of a risk environment, it should be good for crypto, but we still need to understand our levels. Where does it make sense to be a buyer? Where does it make sense to be a seller? All right. And if that's something that you struggle with, then just, look at the chart for the clear and obvious things, right? Look here, something stopped the market here, right? See the long upside wicks, price consolidates, loses the low, but then has this really big recovery. So what we're saying is, well, what stopped price in here? Get your line out. I like to fix to a body, right? Or, an area that will at least include some of the wicks. So then as we did above here, we can just take the box out and we can say to ourselves, all right, well, where did price not close above? Here, right? So wicked in, body close, wick, rejection, price closes above, retest the area, expands a lot higher. So when we got back to here and loads of people were mentally selling into this, and you heard a lot of really kind of bearish sentiment try to come into the market, the plan should be a lot simpler than you're making it, right? Not you, but that a lot of people make it. Either focus on the key area of the consolidation, in my opinion, and wait for price to close down below that, and then run it down first of all to this low and then lower, because if it lost this area here, that's a big inefficiency for it to retrace. Or, you know, finesse it a little bit more, look for the price to come back down below here and then sell off, but only start by targeting these lows. You know, at the moment, when people were here, you're just longing into resistance, and that's why a lot of people got hurt yesterday, because people were refusing to buy here, or when we had some more confirmation here, because they feel like they're getting into the move too late. And that's where risk and position management comes in so very key. But what we got here, that's what I'm hoping happens with XRP. Awesome, mate. Yeah, I'm hoping the same for you, my friend. All right, let's pop back to Bitcoin very quickly. We'll cover that for everybody that missed that at the beginning of the show. It's actually a really kind of simple plan here on the daily. These are the key areas. This is a weekly level of resistance. We've been monitoring this for quite a while. It's the week beginning 7th of July. Just really cleanly capped that market. Again, look, the wick's trying to get up, but price getting closed back below till we see that weakness. Again, we react at the level where there was previously resistance and price moves higher. We then see this long upside wick, telling us that the likelihood was you know, probably going to move in a little bit later on. Stefan's absolutely made. What we've got coming up after this is we're going to look at Solana, Asta Stable, and SNX as well, which has been recommended. But if you have anything you would like me to take a look at, please do let me know, and then do hang around for the end of the show if you can, because we've got an exciting competition to announce for you all as well, which my team's just reminded me about. So anyway, on the 4 hour, which is the most aggressive time frame here, this was the plan that we laid out. All right, so coming in, we had the move here, expansion above, right? So looking for this area here to provide the retests and push price higher. Obviously, always being careful at prior all-time highs. We really want to see price establish itself above here now for continuation higher. We then lost that position down here. So this is the secondary area that we'd highlighted. These are just the OB standing for order block, or I know them, well, utilize them, I know them more as areas of supply and demand. But in truth, there's a lot of nuance around that. So I think order block, abbreviated to OB, kind of encapsulates the consolidation before, the expansion. Price imbalance here, out of balance, imbalance, out of balance. And these are the areas that we target, for continuation. Because if the buyers were strong here, look at the move that led to. Consolidation, think about this as price being considered fair value. Look at your auction market theory, for example. So price is considered fair value here, then bang, then it gets out of it, then it creates another area of fair value, then it expands again. When price drops back, it's retesting these areas for a reason. This is where buyers were strong. So basically, every time you retest an area like this, the market's asking the question, okay, buyers, in this case, are you strong enough to put in for continuation? You are. Fantastic. Up we go. You would favor that then. You would favor continuation here because we've got bullish structure, meaning that people are willing to buy at higher prices. Now, what we do is if we lose these areas and we come back, we look to the other areas. And again, then you get these real inefficiencies here. And for me, these are the areas I'm more interested in shorting into, because we would have really lost structure at this point. This consolidation would back down this key area of resistance that's now become support. Yeah. If we get back down below that here, that's where we could really start to see a flush. But we do want to be aware also of our key SR levels. We can see this here, the support offered through here, the resistance to support, deviation, price closes beneath, retest, sells off, retest, sells off, large expansion through it here after a little bit of an initial rejection. So this is again going to be a key level. So it's all about kind of timing this. Bitcoin at the moment looks good in my opinion. I would like to see Bitcoin just kind of chill out here for a little while and watch that capital start to rotate into altcoins as well. Pavel, hello mate, and welcome to the show. I had a call with a wonderful Polish gentleman called Pavel the other day. I've got another good friend called Pavel as well, who runs a magnificent fund called Nomad Fulcrum. We seem to see each other all over the world. So this is where we stand at the moment on Bitcoin. This is important because this is how it plans and plays into the rest of the market. If we're looking here at Bitcoin dominance as well, we're going to look at this on a slightly higher time frame. This has been the plan with BTCD. All right, we've seen this here. We saw that just relentless grind up, which was killing alt. Something interesting you can do when you want to compare these things, just go to the plus symbol up here next to the ticker. So this is BTCD. What you can do here is you can add on. So let's go with Ethereum, add it to a new price scale. Yeah. And then you get to see this. So this was the price of Ethereum And this is obviously Bitcoin dominance. If you want to make it even cleaner, you can take your chart here up by on the same bit next to indicators on the left, move it to a line chart, and then you can compare the two. And there's no that you can see as this is grinding up on Bitcoin dominance, Bitcoin sapping and just soaking all the liquidity out of the market. This is what happens to ETH. And then on the tiniest little drop-offs like this, look at the expansions that we see. So at the moment, what we can see quite clearly here, and the reason that we've drawn this level 57% or 57.71 is a level that I've had on there for a long time, right? We can see as price came up to this area here, previously it's like a form of support and resistance, although it doesn't really work in an overly similar way. It's more a case of monitoring the levels. Price has really been trying to kind of grind up here. Yeah, so we can see that, but actually, as we look at this here as well, we can see ETH and we can see Bitcoin dominance. Now, Bitcoin dominance is moving up. ETH has had this really nice resurgence here, but look at the period at which we saw this expansion. If we go and look at Bitcoin dominance here, actually, it's just been in this kind of small range, right? So while this is kind of, it is moving up very slowly, but it's allowing that capital, that liquidity to go into riskier assets, like in this case, Ethereum, but also other altcoins. So that's where we are with Bitcoin dominance. So just to give that some context, we're also now just going to take a quick look here at the NASDAQ, all right? And I don't really need to show you anything more than that. This thing has been tearing faces for God knows how long. This was the best dip you could have ever wished to buy in your entire life. And annualized returns on this asset now, I think, are about 10 or 11%. They're pretty ridiculous. A lot of people kind of calling for a top in the NASDAQ, but I think the key thing here is the risk around the fact that we've got people are looking towards this being a bit of a bubble, all right? And that's because things like the NASDAQ are propped up so heavily. We look at the Magnificent Seven here, that's Apple, Amazon, Google, Meta, Microsoft, Nvidia, and Tesla. These guys are responsible for such a relatively unhealthy percentage of the upwards momentum in the NASDAQ, all right, and the S&P 500 as well. So the fear here, and Nvidia pretty much above all of them. Nvidia at one point was almost single-handedly dragging the entire index up. So the worry here is if these start to turn, we could really start to see this drop off. Now, we're not seeing, in my opinion, necessarily bubble-like conditions. If you're looking for your price, against earnings and stuff like that, we're nowhere near that overextension that we saw in the dot-com bubble. And also, company valuations with little or no earnings in the dot-com bubble were absolutely mental. Companies were getting bought for hundreds of millions that had just barely proved concept and had no earnings. So there's a big risk there, where actually a lot of these companies are posting really good earnings, especially Nvidia. And remember, the dot-com bubble, what made that so, and a lot of people don't talk about this, right, but the thing that made that so aggressive and so brutal was the fact that most of it was built on debt. All right. So, the most of the investment that's going into this space at the moment is coming in from company profits, right? So there's a huge difference whether that's credit, or whether that's, coming in from the company's bottom lines themselves. So in my opinion, market still looks healthy here. We could obviously still see major shocks to this. We are still seeing information run through from tariffs. We saw the kind of, PPE, the kind of producer price index raise its ugly head a little bit a few prints ago. That then kind of allied fears when that dropped back down. But there is a fear that as these tariffs continue and as these stockpiles dwindle, the price for the producers goes up, and then that ultimately either gets handed on to the consumers in the form of CPI, or we see it take a hit on the economy based on the balance sheet, because the companies then, it's going to affect their bottom line. So with all of that out of the way, what does it all mean? It means that Bitcoin's, set a new all-time high. We're looking for that to consolidate now and allow some of that capital to rotate down into altcoins. We're looking at a very healthy equity market picture at the moment. We're looking at very healthy indexes in terms of the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ. We're seeing bond yields down a little bit here, so they're a little bit calm. But of the other thing as well that I know I don't cover a lot on these shows, but I really do like tracking high yielding versus low yielding, or risk on versus risk off currencies like Aussie JPY and New Zealand JPY, which has been a little bit flatter, but Aussie has been a really good one. These are often a really good risk on proxy as well, right? So just looking at this at the moment, we're also seeing DXY here. DXY is still so flat. This is our range here. We're caught below the midline at the moment. The correlation for this has been slightly questionable, all right? But overall, again, look, dollar lower, VIX lower, risk looking good. Risk on currencies looking good, equities doing well, indexes doing well. The picture should be there for crypto to thrive, and that really hasn't changed. So it's very important to remember that. The last thing I'm going to point out before we really start drilling into the charts is the volatility index, the VIX. All right, look at this as almost like a fear index. Look at this as the higher this goes, the more people are taking up puts. Or think of it like this: if you're not really sure of traditional terminology, think about it as like short-based options on the S&P 500, meaning that as we see these spikes in the moment, you know, a lot more people are looking to short the S&P 500. Consider that as your risk basket. So people are getting a little bit more anti-risk here. And again, you can do things in here like you can say, okay, well, how is this affecting, you know, the NASDAQ? Or if you're really looking at this, you can say, well, how's it affecting cryptocurrency, right? Yeah, you can see here, look, there's a very clear downtrend here, and the VIX being below 20 is also important. Versus if we start to see this thing spike, you know, bottom to top here, this saw a really, really sharp sell-off. But then as it started to fall back down, look at how price really increased here. Where's the VIX sat at the moment? We've seen a small resurgence here, but it's comfortably below 20 and pretty flat, continuing its macro downtrend. So from where I'm sat, things still look really good for risk. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to look at this, and from my perspective here, I'm going to always kind of lay out the plans for what I want to see, what I don't want to see, and we're going to rip through that on Solana, Asta Stable, and SNX. If anybody has recommended anything or would like to see anything covered in the chat, please do remind me, or just pop it in the chat if you haven't asked already, and I'll take a look. Guzzle a little bit of lukewarm tea, and we're away. So Solana, I think we were maybe looking at this with our friends over at Binance recently, weren't we? Let's take another look here. Maybe it was on that. Let's take a look anyway. Here we are. This is the right chart. Right, so daily full of squiggles, right? And it looks like there's some really big box areas here, but I'm going to explain each and every one of them to you. I'm just going to draw that back across here. Let's extend these boxes out a little bit. Right, so daily, where are we? Ultimately, this was a really big consolidation here. We saw the initial breakout, and then this area here really led to this pump. Price coming back down into this area. They're just not an area you should have wanted to short less here, because look at the reaction here. Previously, if those buyers want to still protect that position or they want to add to it, this is probably the most likely place they're going to do it. These fast moves up, if price does break down, often have fast corrections down. You'll hear the old adage of staircase up, elevator down. Well, this was actually the opposite. This was elevator up and elevator down after a very small consolidation, all right? So as we look at this here, this was obviously a great buying position, but that's no good to us now because that has gone. Price is recovering structure here, which is quite nice. Ultimately as well, if we look at this on a higher time frame, yeah, this is just so healthy. Expansion, consolidation, right? And then look what happens here. Yeah, so we get the expansion, consolidation. Price then breaks out from this initial part, respects it, breaks out from here, respects that, breaks out from here, respects that, and breaks out from here and respects that. What am I targeting here? You'll notice that I'm targeting the bearish candles or the down close candles, and as I call them, or, you know, they're black on my chart, might be red on yours, or any kind of colors, but basically these are our down close or bearish candles where they open higher and close lower. These are the areas here that we're looking for sellers to then dominate, right? These black candles represent a lot of sellers coming into the market here, trying to get price pushed lower. When they get forced out of the market here, it's telling us the buyers have kind of won this battle here. They're getting stronger, so we look for continuation. And then we trade that until it breaks. Yeah, so for example, here we can see similar. Sellers trying to take control, buyers dominate, retest, sellers can get out, join the pump, all right? We saw the same thing here. Above this area offered support, price moved above again. Then when did we start to see that dynamic change? Was through here. Yeah, this is where buyers were in control of the market. We saw a lovely rejection here, very clean swing failure. Price then broke down below here. Very small retest, really sold off aggressively. Continue to respect the up close candles in this case because we're bearish. So we're looking for where the buyers are caught offside, and we did so through here as well. That's why it's so important. What I look for are the violations of these. So if that's where Buyers tried to gain control. Now they're offside. If they held through that drawdown, we've got expansion above here. Those sellers are now offside, and this consolidation that led to the drop is now being controlled by buyers. So we then step in to, however you would call it, we start a bullish trend, or we're stepping into a buy program. Ultimately, people are willing to buy at higher prices. So on a weekly scale, this just looks super healthy at the moment. There's nothing really to write home about. I would start to get a little bit concerned if we closed below here. All right, this was our weekly kind of area of demand. Looking at closes below here, I think we could start to target some of these areas down here. Moving this on to the daily, this was a really key area. Resistance through here, support, lost the area, reclaimed it here. So this actually, we'll look at this on the 4 hour. It looks a little bit clearer, is a decent pivot. We never got the breakout from this consolidation. So if we don't get the breakout and we do get the breakdown, then we're expecting price to retrace to where it was previously in balance, or where it was considered fair value, which is this consolidation. We've held this, now we're expanding higher. So naturally our target is this. So we have two options here. We wait for this area here, which we're just going to do in an obnoxious color so it stands out. We wait for this area here to be closed above, price retest this, and we move higher, or we start to build smaller positions down around these areas here. I actually quite like the breakout play of this area, which I'm going to show you on the 4 hour as well. Crypto Alien, hello mate. Pengu, for you, of course, my friend. We'll slap that onto the end. Let's have a look. Pengu. Right, so I go on to the 4 hour. Now then, on the 4 hour, we can see a little bit more granularity, right? We saw the resistance through here. We saw it get it here. Nice move above, retest moves higher. Then price came in here. This area was so desperately tried to be held and protected here by the buyers, but it wasn't. Price sold off. Underside retest of this consolidation, price sold off again. What happened here, as we see with our squiggles, I'll just move that out of the way, is we got the nice strong move above, retest, see the wicks coming down into this area, price moved higher. So now we're back being trapped here. And at the minute, price is kind of ping-ponging around in this range. So I'd like to see this area hold here. And again, we'd just like to see us either come back down for this here and then have a breakout, look for some market structure within here, hopefully set a down close candle, secondary from this that we can close above, showing that dynamic shift. If not, and I don't have it on that time frame, then I am willing to drop a bit lower here. And I'll tell you for why, just purely because we're at a level that I think buyers could be stepping in. Yeah, this consolidation that led to this big rip. So what do we want to see? Well, we're just not going to get ahead of ourselves, right? We're looking for key support, resistance areas, and breakouts. So within here, I'm really interested in kind of this area here. I'll tell you for why. I want to see price close above this. Yeah, and I want to see a really convincing close. Price really expand higher. Actually, let me move that down because I do focus here on the bodies. I want to see price move above this here, retest it, and then we move higher. Why? Because this is where the buyers tried to take control of the market. Sellers took control of the market here. But now if we can get back above this level, we're first of all going to put these buyers back in control. And we're also those buyers are going to start dominating those sellers. So we start to see those kind of moves where you get that sharp move back. When price comes back, those sellers that have now held through this drawdown or are offside here, if they've not been stopped out already, can then decide to shut their positions out for minimal or no risk and then join the trend that's developing higher. Okay, so that's the key area there. I'd normally look for this on a 4 hour. We don't really have it that clean on a 4 hour. So I would be willing to step in here on the 1 hour here on Solana. Right, let's take a look at Asta. Asta's been in this beautiful range, and one of the guys on my trading team, a trader called Justpit, who I still think is one of the most underrated traders in the world, by the way. He's absolutely exceptional. Has been scalping Asta like a monster, just doing, crazy amounts on it because it's just been trading so clean. Now, this might look messy at the moment, but I'm going to get into the context around why this is here. And I probably should have cleaned this up before the live show, but I do apologize. We just get rid of these. It's just our projection from our volume profiles. Let me turn them off. Yeah, so plan remains really, really simple. Let's extend these across. Price is just ranging between these two areas. Now, I leave this previous volume profile on here, I did anyway, because it was just so very clean. We could see how price was returning to within the volume area, coming back out. If we were to draw a larger one on here now, and I know volume profile purists will probably shout at me for this. People have different ways to do it. I really look for these key expansions and then the high at which the consolidation starts. And yeah, this is quite messy. You could argue there's a secondary volume profile here as well. So what I like to do is kind of take both into context, right? Because this fits really well for me. You can see the range lows being protected. You can see where price steps back into the range, steps back above the point of control here, which is the red line, comes back up to the range high. We see 2 deviations of that and price coming underneath. If we look at that line here, coming back underneath here, seeing those long upside wicks, showing that we're getting rejection in here. So if we look at how price has performed so far, low to high, high to low, low to mid, yeah. Then we saw that flush underneath, induced a lot of late sellers. Price came back from here. That was a good area to start an intraday short position, in my opinion. You wouldn't have got a lot out of it. Maybe you would have even got stopped. But for me, the retest is the play there. Then when price stepped back in, we saw some absorption come in here. Price stepped back in, closed above, but gave us a doji candle. Then we got kind of a bearish pin bar here. But then we started to see the tides turn, the engulfing candle, and then up into the highs. Highs back down to the lows, lows to the highs. So one of 2 things is going to happen. Price, we either need to see some confirmation breakdown and price comes back down to the lows, where I would happily be adding to my portfolio down here, or we get this move that we were looking for previously, right? Which is looking for the breakout. This level's now changed because we would want it to be around about here. Add those in, dominate this area. Look, price hasn't closed above this since we got this deviation. So we would want to see price close above. But unlike this candle, you want to see a big bearish engulfing candle coming back into the level. And if you do, you then want to see this level recovered. What you would want to see is something more akin to like a bullish pin bar candle. All right. So, or an engulfing, something quite nice like this. Yeah. Price coming down, we see that initial reaction, we get the doji, but then you get a nice engulfing candle there with a slightly longer downside wick. That's when you can kind of step into the market with a little bit of conviction. So for Astra, I'm either looking to do the breakout play above this level. This is roughly about 2.1645. Again, strong move above, then the dips are for buying. If we closed back under this here, then I would be trading it back down to there. I'm actually only holding Astra in spot, so if I was trading it, that's how I would kind of approach it. Right, let's take a look at Stable as well. Stable's been a really interesting one because fundamentally it's very, very strong. If we look at this here, you can see the plan that we've had in place with the glorious squiggles again, but this was a great buy. I bought here, I explained on every live show since, right? This was the consolidation that led to this big rip. Price came down in here. This blue line here is where we added. I added some more here. I added some more here. Again, I haven't sold. I actually sold positions up here before re-adding here. I then did sell some of the position back off here, which was for fundamental reasons. Price came back down underneath. So then I wasn't looking to add here until we got back above this. But as I clearly stated, this was the area that I would be adding again. And it was, price could really come back down below this here, but this was a really good area. It was simply targeting the consolidation where the buyers were so aggressively strong before. So for me, it hasn't really changed. I would still be happy to add here again. We've got a large consolidation here. So again, if we did see a breakdown below this level, it's going to kind of come back to a buy zone in here. And I would kind of target this here, which is down all the way to 0.14. I'm not saying that it's going to do that, but for me, I'm happy to add a little bit more down here, but I am fairly exposed to Astra already. And I have added again down here, either that or it's looking for price to get back above this here. And actually probably change that here a little bit with the information we've got now, because something that we can see through here is actually price really trying to get some kind of support through this area here. Again, if I'm just trying to take up the wicks, that's not the worst area there for price to kind of get back above and give us some impetus to the upside. Because look, support all the way through here. Price desperately tried for support through here, sold off, small deviation, underside retest here, price selling off. We're now back here again, finding rejection. So I think if we can get back above this here, right, I think this is a good breakout play here. Right, but again, strong move above. Try and see some downside wicks here to show you absorption like we saw down here, right? If not, then this line here would be the play. All right, that's where I am on stable. So SNX. Oh, what we got here? SNX. I thought we had a look at this recently. Let's see where we are. Okay, so yeah, nice move. Weekly scale, this was the consolidation, rejection. Now had that nice move above here that we were obviously looking for. So moving to this on the daily here, this is the gap that we've created. We must have highlighted this previously. Price moving back down, and we're now back down at this green line, which represents the which represents the area of demand, right? This is where the buyers overwhelm the sellers. Price moved up. We're now back down here again. So the key thing for me here would be just holding above this. And if we move this to a lower time frame now, I just want to see some structural recoveries. All right. Now we can see here we had this initial one. This would have really teased me in, by the way, if I was looking to play this. Again, you either want to be early, so you want to be on the rebuys here when you start to see the absorption coming in. But yeah, at the moment, it would now be this high. I would actually want to see price moving above, or a slightly deeper move like this, and then a recovery of structure from that level, I think would be quite clean. So let's take a look, see if we get that. That would be my play there on SNX. Pengu for our friend. I can't remember which one we were looking at this on, mate, actually. It's all the way back in here, wasn't it, with Pengu? All right, well, this is all old news now, isn't it? So let's start nice and clean. Weekly, beautiful move higher. Now we're stepping into this consolidation. One thing we can see here is actually pretty clean kind of trend line play down here. Move it like that. I think that's super clean, actually. So looking for that on a weekly scale, anything kind of coming up above that. If we just kind of look, we draw a very kind of rudimentary level here embodying the wicks. We would look at that for weekly support. We can see we're sitting in this triangle pattern at the moment. Moving this to the daily, see price poking its head above, trying to kind of break out from this area. We are compressing up into this now after starting a nice move off of these lows. See, we deviated below these lows here and then started to move higher. Just seeing if we've got any real kind of, it's a little bit messy through here in terms of looking for a really kind of clean level. As we move this onto the 4 hour, something we can see here is this. This was support through here. Actually, if we track this back a little bit as well, even though it does look messy. Yeah, resistance, support, lost resistance, deviation, sells off, gets back above, holds the level. Yeah, that's a good level. I like that. We want to be above here, I think, for Pengu. That starts the high of this about 0.03319. I think a good move above this, hold this, and moving up higher from there. Just looking at that on the 4 hour. Yeah, we want to see it. A very similar kind of move to this, right, which is where it comes in, takes out some lows, maybe here or here, and then we see that strong move above. And then we play the breakout from above there. That's a really clean play there. And behind you, dog. Great name. Hey, can you check out Porphyrium? I love it. I'm a massive dog lover, so I will certainly try for you. Porphyrium in wrapped teeth. Let's go. Okie doke. Right, let's take a look at this. Wowzers. Okie dokie. That is an interesting one. Hope I'm on the right chart, by the way, mate. This has seen, well, one thing, if you're a glass half full kind of guy or girl, is that there's a lot of upside potential, right? At the minute, I'd be looking at this on a weekly scale and saying, okay, well, that was the origin of that major breakout there. So that's the kind of area to hold within there. It's very difficult with the market data like this from a technical perspective. I'd definitely be looking at those key news and fundamental drivers, but refining this a little bit further here, we could maybe include this. You can see price not massively respecting that, though. How it kind of came underneath, moving above. So we'll let that go. I think this thing is operating on obviously much higher time frames here. I think if we even try a 4 hour here, yeah, we're just kind of seeing these. The difficult thing here is what you're getting is it's like a very binary delivery, possibly some liquidity issues, which is to be expected because we're in such an oversaturated space. But this thing is grinding up here at the moment. But unfortunately, my friend, there's not really much more. Let me have a look. Really much more. We saw this big pump up here, and this just got dumped aggressively, didn't it? So let's ask ourselves this question, right? If the seller's really in control of the market here, this is a monthly chart, by the way, just to provide full context. this is probably the key for me here, this area, seeing price back above this on a monthly scale. Because look, prices come back into here, met with not quite the lows of this, but certainly this inefficiency here. And then, you know, whoever's bought that off the lows, they've either just sold straight off again, or other people have sold and then pushed the market back down to this level. Just want to continue to see buyers stepping in. What I would say is, when the technicals like this aren't necessarily that clear, one thing that we do look at in a big way is saying, okay, what's the fundamental picture? If there's a good team, if there's a vibrant community, if it's got a good use case, if all of these things really start to line up, then this is probably a great place to add some. What I would say as well is that the upside is fantastic. Yeah, and again, I don't know this from a fundamental side. It's not, you know, encouraging anyone to buy it, but you know, if you know more about this and you do have some belief in this, you've got almost a 650% upside. But it would definitely be from a fundamental perspective there, guys. Right, just before we finish up, I want to tell you all about something quite exciting that we've got coming up, all right? So if you fancy taking on traders from all levels, professional and otherwise, people will be trading this from the Nest. We'll have some of the trading team, we'll have members, a lot of other people that are involved in this as well. So CEX.io margin trading competition. This is really, really exciting, all right? And one of the lovely things that they've done for us and our members, all you need to do is you need to just go and sign up. You can do that, pop across onto our Twitter page, all right, and find out a little bit more about it there. You just need to use the, and let me copy it across for you. If you use our referral link, I just found out from one of the team, they're doing us an extra bonus deal. So if you sign up using the Birb Nest referral link, you get up to 1,000 USDC fee bonus on your first deposit. They're absolutely blowing this one out of the water. What an absolute legend. So let me tell you about the competition itself. Yeah, share of up to 100,000 USDT pool, and this grows with trading volume. Again, more people participate, the more volume goes up, the more you stand to win. Trading until the 23rd of October. So it's a nice short time period. The top 10 traders share the rewards, plus a whole host of random prizes for all participants. So just by joining, you get access to all of those prize gifts. And as well, like I say, if you sign up, let me pop you a link here as well, guys, that you can use. I'm sure that you can find this on our Twitter profile as well. Do go and have a look. And if you can't, just come and reach out to me, all right, BC_Richfield, and reach out to me on Twitter, and I'll make sure you guys get hooked up. This is really, really good. We've just been talking about it with all of our members and that as well. We wanted to let you guys know about it. Ultimately, the more of us that are all involved in this, then the prize pool just keeps going up. And I would love, love, love some of you guys to be involved in that. Please do let us know. The last couple of competitions we've done, we've had some amazing winners, been getting some great emails from you guys, enjoying days out with either OKX, winning prize pools, getting loads of free merch. I love that side of things. Who doesn't love a bit of free swag, and especially some free cash? So I hope you've enjoyed the show today, guys. Thank you very much for bearing with me. Haven't necessarily been at my best today, but I really didn't want to miss the show. I look forward to seeing you all again on Monday and Wednesday for our live shows next week, as well as any of you that are members, and we'll see you around the Nest later on today. We've got the live trading show starting in about an hour and 10 minutes. Going to see what setups we get across crypto as well as the NASDAQ. All right, Demon, thank you very much. Behind you, dog. Crypto Alien, Stefan, Pavel, Burton, Jojo, sorry if I've forgotten you as well. There's loads of people on here as well. Lops, and everybody that joined from the beginning as well. Paradox Trade, Gokhan. I hope you will have a fantastic week ahead, and I hope to see some of you guys over with us. If you're not already over at the Birb Nest, you can find information on that down in the description. Have a fantastic week ahead, guys, and I look forward